Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, it does seem like there's less news this year somehow, now that Aaron Rodgers is deciding to just hole up in a cave somewhere.
Yeah, which is funny because last year him holding up in a cave was news.
Right? Like, I'm absolutely convinced he's not going to sign until training camp. And it's the thing that most veteran players hate the most. Like, oh, I'd keep playing, but I don't want to get either. It's I don't want to get hit or I don't want to go to training camp. So, yeah, I have a feeling he's just waiting for training camp and is just taunting.
It would be outstanding for him to continue the Favre comparisons, right?
It'd be ridiculous. I love it. I love the idea of him doing that. And the Steelers today bringing in Shedeur Sanders, like, hey, look who we brought in. Like, you sure you don't want to make a deal over here?
Hey, just in case, you know, we do cover our bases. Talk to all the quarterbacks, players in the draft.
Yeah, that. I know I've said this before, but I can't imagine anyone looking at that train wreck last year and going, yep, I want to be a part of that. Can I sign more members of the Jets offense for the last 2 years?
Just takes one. It just takes one team to be like, now it didn't work out for them, but it could work out for us.
Yes, Tobias. It really could work for all of us. And with that, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. We hope you guys are all doing well. It is, of course, the off season. We are recording less and less, but we are building up to the draft. There, I saved it. So we're building up to the draft. We have an expert on. We'll be talking to in just a few minutes about some expectations for the 2025 draft. We are also going to go a bit around the league, some stuff, and go to the mailbag as well. But before we do any of that, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us out financially, there's a couple of things you could do. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode for $3.50 a month or a little less for the year subscription. You get access to the Discord, you get access to the bonus episodes, all that. We will be putting out the April Patreon preview episode a little late this year. Still not as late as that Christmas episode a couple of years ago, but late nevertheless. An idea has been hatched and work has been ridiculous for me, so I haven't been able to get it out yet, but we will be getting that out shortly, so that will be fun for everybody who's not a member of the Patreon to take a listen to what we give them, once a month or twice a month during the regular season. So check that out. That'll be posting soon, but yeah, patreon.com/NorseCode. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well if you'd like to give a one-time donation, or you can go over to norsecode.threadless.com, where an idea was asked or hatched in the Discord asking, hey, could we get hats? Like, actually, probably. Let me check on that. So went in and sure enough, we have 3 hat designs that are available for people. And they are both of the Wigglers.
Right. The happy one and the rage one, yeah.
You can get the rage one in pink, which I love. For some reason, that one goes hard.
It looks so good. I am a little disturbed by how good it looks.
Right? It's not okay. But that is an option, and then the regular Norse Code logo is also available on the 2 styles of hats. So check that out, norsecode.threadless.com. Also, we did a couple things with some of the hoodies, and the one hoodie in particular has the Norse Code logo like on what would normally be a pocket, and that looks sharp as hell. So that might be worth looking into if you are interested in zip-up hoodies, which I am. Looks good. So again, if you're interested, norsecode.threadless.com. I think we make like $5 a hat, which is a lot considering.
That's pretty good.
that's pretty good considering the pennies we make on everything else. So
yeah, like someone buys like how much are the hoodies? Like $50?
Something like that.
Yeah, someone buys a hoodie and then we get a notification that's like, "Hey, you earned like $1," and it's like, dope.
I think on the hoodies we make slightly more, but regardless, this is not a good business venture or anything. This is not our primary way of making money. But if you'd like merch of the show, check out norsecode.threadless.com. Also, you can get your shower curtain there still. I assure you that hasn't gone away. So with all of that, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. We are going to go to an interview that Arif conducted earlier today with JP Acosta. He is a Florida man, and he is a writer for SB Nation.
All right, I'm here with my good friend JP Acosta. Did I pronounce that right? I think I got that.
Yeah, Acosta. I've heard people say Acosta. I've heard Acosta. I actually have had people say my last name correctly more often than my first name, which is crazy.
You mean like it's not JP? Like they're saying...
I've been called AJ, BJ, CJ, DJ, JJ, PJ, TJ. Any other variant with J as the second letter instead of the first, I have been called that. My teacher in 7th grade, my science teacher, could not get my name right at all.
All right, we're here with JJ Acoustic from SB Nation.
That's my pseudonym.
Yeah. That's like when you want to do like some like 90s covers or whatever, you just pull out the guitar. Hey, it's JJ Acoustic. This is Wonderwall.
My next endeavor is doing Teddy Pendergrass covers as JJ Acoustic.
There you go. All right, man. Yeah, not a ton to talk about in the Vikings universe that I actually want to talk about, so we're going to talk about the draft. So we're in a group chat, and you put in the group chat earlier that you had a hot take that this draft class actually wasn't as bad as people were saying. I actually didn't really realize that people talked about this like a bad draft class. I think we're really used to like having a ton of receiver talent, which we don't have this year. But we've got a lot of defensive tackle talent, a lot of running back talent. And so it never struck me as like a bad draft class, just like not one strong into positions that we're kind of used to over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it feels like this draft class is a great test for people who really want to learn more about these players and why they work so well and how to project them at the next level. There really aren't a lot of great quarterbacks in this class. There aren't a lot of great wide receivers in this class, but outside of not having guys that are going to be like superstars at the next level, I think there's maybe you can count on one hand the amount of guys who I think are going to be superstars at the next level in this draft class. But there are so many incredibly useful players up and down the board where you might not have, like I said, that star talent, but in terms of finding quality role players, designated pass rushers, you need like the power slot that the McVay and Shanahan clans have made super popular over the last few years. You have so many of those different body types, different usages, different roles. And I think that's just really cool. I've had a lot of fun scouting this class.
Yeah, I mean, like when you can take a look at a player and you know that player isn't going to be like a universal fit, right? He's not going to do everything that you want like a top 3 pick to do, but you figure out kind of the role that he'll succeed in, that you can maximize him in. I think that's like a fun puzzle to solve.
Yeah, it's like what I always think about when it comes to the NFL draft is not only what can you do for me now, but what can you become? That's what the biggest question for draft evaluators, question for front offices is. It's not only can you work for me right now, but can I see you becoming something special in a few years? So with this class, there are a lot of athletic question marks. There's injury question marks, but it's not just about what this guy can do for you now. It's about what can they become? How can you see this guy in a certain role? So that's why I think schematic fit and team fit is going to be super important in this year's class, because there are just a lot of guys who aren't super scheme versatile, but guys who can be really, really good in a really good 4-3 defensive end instead of just an okay 3-4 outside linebacker. The difference between that is huge. And I think there are a lot of guys that are better at that than there are just ubiquitous scheme versatile guys.
Right. So like fewer Myles Garretts, right?
Yes.
Well, okay, so you mentioned like, hey, there's like a couple of guys that are going to be superstars. Who are those guys to you before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of the draft class? Let's like knock that one out of the, it's like inviting the question, right? So like, who are those guys?
So I think up front is Travis Hunter. I think when we use the term generational, I think it's thrown out a lot, and I think it's thrown out just far too often. We like saying generational for everything and everybody, but Travis Hunter truly is generational. I don't think we've ever seen a prospect enter the draft that is just as good of a receiver as he is a corner, and someone who played as much receiver as he did corner. I think the stat that went around was I think he had more receiving yards and receiving touchdowns than Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson combined in their college careers.
Yep.
So getting a guy with that high volume at both spots and legitimately could be a superstar at both spots, you're not going to find that kind of guy again. I think the next guy who is going to be a superstar is Abdul Carter. I think Carter's a interesting prospect because people are going, oh, he can play edge, he can play linebacker, he can do anything that you want him to. But like, to me, he is an edge prospect. He is someone who has just this amazing blend of speed and just violence. And I think the way that he moves with urgency. I think that's something that's going to speak a lot to teams that just want somebody who they can unleash in different fronts, different varieties, and just cause havoc. So I think that's another.
So you mentioned like, hey, some people kind of maybe see him as like a line. Is that like some jersey scouting too? Because Micah Parsons was an off-ball linebacker that has transitioned to full-time edge, but was playing both roles for the Cowboys for a while. Is that like a little bit of jersey scouting, or is it just because he's like so outstanding of a prospect that like people have kind of gone out from like over their skis on this one?
I think it's a little bit of jersey scouting and a little bit of, I mean, Abdul Carter was playing linebacker before he moved to edge full-time this season. So it's a little bit of both of that, but I think his usage is much clearer as an edge defender than it is an off-ball linebacker. I think sometimes his instincts and coverage can get a little shaky, which is why just put him on the edge and go tell him to go find the ball. And I think that he'll be a really incredibly useful player. So he's one of the guys I think can be a superstar immediately. I think Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State, is one of my favorite prospects I think I've ever watched. Just the contact balance and the ability not only to get the routine plays, but to find explosives behind that offensive line. And even without being a runner, in 2023, he led the nation in yards per route run as a receiver. So he is a multifaceted prospect who didn't get to show that off because he casually had more yards after contact as a runner than most guys did total for the last season in college football. So I think he's another one of those guys that I'm really, really excited to see become an instant superstar at the next level. But outside of those guys, I mean, I think there will be some really good players. There are going to be some incredibly useful players, but those are the true super duper star prospects in this class.
Oh, all right. Let's talk about not those guys then. So obviously, I think, for people following the Vikings, there's like a lot of emphasis on cornerback. I mean, they have addressed the position nominally in free agency. It seems like a lot of people are very excited about Isaiah Rodgers, which is a little amusing to me because he's played like 400 career snaps and then became a free agent. But it sounds like Brian Flores is really high on him. I don't think that this prevents the Vikings from grabbing a cornerback in round one, obviously near the end of round one. And there's a lot of different types of corners. It seems like you've got like the versatile types like the Jahdae Barons. You've got, the Savon Ravels. Who in that range do you think can kind of fit in a Brian Flores defense? And then mind you, what a Brian Flores defense has like changed over the years. So it's not that important, but right now it's, kind of an off-the-line zone corner, but Rodgers isn't an off-the-line zone corner necessarily. He might do press stuff. So I'm kind of curious, like what we have available to us, taking a look at these corners near the bottom of the first round, and then maybe, in the third, fourth round, guys that stand out to you.
So the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about Brian Flores' defense in Minnesota and what he looks for in corners is length. And that's something that I think he's prioritized since being in Miami, obviously. But you think about guys like Mekhi Blackman, who is just a tall, long corner. You think about in this class, Siobhan Revel is the first guy that comes to mind. Of course, still nursing that ACL injury, but he should be ready for preseason workouts. When you get him impressed and he's able to just bully guys at the line of scrimmage, I think he's one of the best corners in this class at that. I also think a guy like Azaria Thomas from Florida State. Don't get scared off by the slow 40. His 10-yard split was perfectly fine, and I think that matches what he does as a prospect. He's another one of those. We're going to get you at the line of scrimmage. We want you to jam the receiver off the line, and then his instincts in those shorter areas make a lot of sense for a Brian Flores-led team. I also think that Trey Amos from Ole Miss makes a lot of sense. I think it's going the other way. Instead of just these big, tall, long man coverage corners, I think Amos is a lot better at what you were describing in terms of off coverage, a little bit more quarters. He's really good at going through the ball in terms of coming out of his break and playing in cover two. So he's good at playing the flat. He's good at playing in quarters. I think the ball production when it's going vertical scares me a little bit, despite running, I believe he ran a 4.43 at the combine. So I'm a little worried about his ability to play the ball when it's a downfield vertical throw. But when it comes to just attacking the ball immediately, it makes a lot of sense for the Vikings. On day 2, a guy that I think would be really interesting for the Vikings is Darian Porter. He just does not have,
let's go.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of snaps at corner at all. I think he has more snaps at receiver in his college career than he does corner, but just a super athletic, just a monster guy when it comes to making plays on the ball, going and getting the ball, playing like a wide receiver. If you were a big fan of Reek Woolen, who plays for the Seahawks now, I think Darian Porter is right up your alley. Just you want to get him in a room where you can develop him and turn him into something instead of trying to get him to play right away. I think that makes a lot of sense for a team like the Vikings who can kind of slow play him a little bit. He'll be an ace on special teams too. So I think Darian Porter really, really makes a lot of sense in terms of height, weight, speed, and just what he can do and what he can become.
That rules, man. I was talking to kind of the analytics people at the Combine about like getting data on the drills. But like, you know, like the position drills, not like the 40 and all that. And, you know, there's like a line drill, right, where we're trying to figure out like maybe this is one where you backpedal and then turn and then attack the ball running forward. And it really takes a look at your hip fluidity and your ability to kind of stay in a straight line in a backpedal and when you're running. And Darian Porter killed it. Incredible, which like for like a guy his size to have that kind of fluidity was really kind of outstanding to me. Is that something that you see on the field, or is this like kind of just hey, he's got a lot of hip fluidity in shorts?
No, he's an incredibly fluid player. I think that's one of the biggest things that stands out about him on the field. He is such an overwhelming athlete that you can see when it's time to make plays on the ball, when it's time to, like you said, click and close, where he's opening up his hips and then driving downhill, especially in Iowa State's defense, where they play a lot of Tampa 2. They play a lot of their corners heavy into the flats because in that 3 safety defense, the corners are counted on for run support as well, because you can't be a corner afraid to tackle in that defense because you will get run over. You're basically an edge setter in that defense. So his ability to click and close, I think the athleticism just naturally stands out. It's just getting him more snaps at this point, because I think last season he played maybe 100 or so snaps at corner. So it's like, look, man, I really like the guy, but you just have to play more.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I mean, like the Vikings aren't forced to start anyone, so that's like not a bad deal. I think the same thing is true kind of along the defensive line, right? So the Vikings signed Javon Hargrave, they signed Jonathan Allen. They're good at starter for the defensive line, and they're comfortable making players wait. I think I put out on another podcast that the Vikings haven't drafted a day one starter in round one, which it's not really fair to say Jordan Addison wasn't a day one starter, but he played like 40 plus snaps at week one. Either way, they're comfortable having players sit, right? And we've seen that with Dallas Turner along the defensive line. And I think that that's a spot that we can be in for defensive tackles. Now, it wouldn't shock me if they drafted a defensive tackle in round one. I think it's a little bit less likely than something like a cornerback or something. And so taking a look at kind of the way that Flores sets up that front, which I know you love digging into linemen, the way that Flores kind of sets up that front, they could get kind of a long-term 5/3 technique kind of guy, or maybe get a long-term replacement for Harrison Phillips and get a nose tackle. And I know there's a bunch of pretty good nose tackles in this class. When we take a look at kind of the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds for these defensive tackle types, and I know this is supposed to be a pretty good class, who kind of jumps out to you as somebody that might fit as a developmental guy long-term to kind of fit in this system?
So somebody that immediately stands out when you talk about trying to replace that Harrison Phillips role of a nose tackle. 2 guys that almost made my one of them made my all JP team for defensive line. And
that's right. Check that out at SBNation.com.
Yes, shameless plug. Make sure to check that out when it comes out at SB Nation. But CJ West from Indiana is one of my favorite prospects in the class. He has like maybe 31-inch arms. He's 6'1", like 320, but he is a monster in the run game. And he played the nose in Indiana's undersized defense that gave up so little yards per carry when he was on the field. And his ability to play with power, but also quickness, backtracking on the backside of plays or trying to get to the front side of a lot of defenders, it makes a lot of sense considering Minnesota has to play Green Bay and their zone run game multiple times a year. And now you have to go and play whatever Ben Johnson's going to do in Chicago with that offense. Getting somebody who can either get on the backside of those run plays or have the strength to hold up against those double teams, I think that's what CJ West really can do. He's not a super explosive pass rusher, but someone who you can get and immediately go like, all right, you're going to come in, you're going to stop the run. We'll figure everything else out later, but if we can rotate these guys in, especially with Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave kind of being a little older, you can kind of take some hits off of them early in the game or early in the drive. And then when on 3rd down, you can just unleash them. I think CJ West makes a lot of sense. Jay Toya from UCLA has gone crazy underrated during this draft process, but he is a mammoth defensive tackle. I think he's like 6'4", 340, which considering the Titan defensive tackles that we have seen in this class so far is kind of undersized. But I think he's another guy where he offers a little bit more pass.
342. Goodness.
Yes, that's massive, dude. Transferred from USC to UCLA. He offers a little bit more pass rush upside than CJ West, but he is such a just strong and big run defender that he played the nose, he played the 3 technique at UCLA, made a lot of plays there. When I was watching Carson Schwessinger and Femi Oladejo, Jay Toya kept popping up, and I'm like, who is this guy? So I think he makes a lot of sense for the Vikings on those later days. I think when you want somebody who's more of a 3 to 5 technique, I think Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech has some of the most fun tape that I've seen for our defensive line prospect this season. Just incredibly quick off the ball. You know, the spin move that he'll pull out, he can go inside spin, outside spin. He can go through guys. He's small. He's like maybe 6 feet tall. So he's like this little fire hydrant of a player. I love watching the guy. I think he's awesome. He's going to be such an impressive pop in that pass rush room, especially along defensive line. And then one of my favorite players in this draft is Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. He didn't get a lot of spotlight because Derek Harmon rightfully was incredible for the Ducks. But again, he transferred from Houston, and at Houston, he was out as a 315, 320-pound defensive tackle rushing over the edge. Did not do that at Oregon, but he's another one of those big guys who could probably play nose, but you can rotate him at different spots on defensive line. He has this natural athleticism and quickness that I think is going to really show up in the run and passing game. So if you're looking for guys that are probably going to be available late on day 2, early on day 3, those are the three guys that I really think are going to make a lot of sense.
That makes sense. One guy that I've been maybe a little bit too focused on because my exposure to the draft is always pretty late in the process and it gets over leveraged with like Shrine and senior guys. So like, fair to make fun of me for that. But like Zeke Biggers kind of stood out to me at the Shrine game. I know that he's a Brett Coleman guy. What do you think about him? Because I thought he was kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, he is just his upper body strength is really what stands out to me. Like just this massive, massive guy who's really built up front. And I think that he's also another one of those big, long, I think he can play the nose. He could probably play that 3 to 5 tech where you want him in on early downs to stop the run. I think he has some athleticism and some pass rush potential. But when you look at a guy like him, I think of someone who could probably take some hits off of Jonathan Allen early in the game on early downs, then rotate him in. And as he continues to develop, you continue to add on to his pass rush repertoire, and then he becomes somebody that can consistently start.
Okay. Kind of like, and we'll talk about like some of these other positions in a little bit. Those were kind of the focus on the Vikings. But when it comes to watching these positions, like when you watch cornerback, when you watch defensive tackle, I know like every evaluator has their like biases. So for example, when I'm watching guards, if you like are on the ground more than once per game, I'm just out on you. I just can't. And that's a bias. I think I overlook some players because of it, but that's just it. David Yankee has scarred me forever, which is like a throwback to an old Vikings pick. Are there kind of like things that you find yourself really attached to when it comes to a defensive tackle or cornerback? And what are the things that to you strike you as like really important evaluative tools when you're looking at these guys?
I think the first thing that comes up for me is your ability to drop your weight and drop your hips in the run game. For me, it's all about the fluidity and how easy you can move. I wrote a story earlier about how the hips are the most important thing to watch at the NFL Combine because those are what really unlocks athletic potential, especially for defensive linemen who are constantly getting hit and taking double teams. You got to be able to drop your weight. And this kind of goes back to you have to show effort as a run defender, especially as a defensive tackle. It is my biggest holdup with Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. You have to try as a run defender. If you can't try or like want to be a run defender, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. You can only play on one down. So I need a defensive tackle to just try in the run game. Like I can teach technique and I can get you in an NFL weight room and you can add more to your frame. But if you don't want to stop the run, I don't know what I can do with you. You have to at least try or give some effort there. I think when it comes to pass rush, it depends a little bit because we've seen recently with the latest defensive rookie of the years, winning with power translates. We saw Jared Verse immediately win with power, defensive rookie of the year. Will Anderson Jr. won with power, immediately was defensive rookie of the year. So I think for defensive tackles, if you're able to win with power or with a long arm and just have some flashes of a counter to that, you have a plan. I can at least work with that. Or at least have some sort of athleticism where you can learn that. But that comes back to the hips and the ability to move and the ability to generate power and explosiveness. So that's what I look for defensive tackles. For corners, again, it comes down to how quickly you can change direction. Because, again, going back to the combine, the 40 is like important, but it's also you're running in a straight line with nobody chasing you and you're not chasing anyone. So how easy does that translate to an NFL field where everything is constantly changing? The one thing that really does translate when it comes to watching the combine is the change of direction drills. Like you said, the wave drill, the oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot who they named it after. But
the Terrell Austin? Is that
the Terrell Austin drill? Yes.
Yeah.
So those drills that show change of direction and your response to different things being thrown at you that you really cannot plan for. Your ability to react as a corner. That's something that I'm really looking for, especially with guys that are a little bit bigger, a little bit taller, a little bit longer, like Azaria Thomas, like a Siobhan Ravel. those guys tend to not be able to sink their hips or change direction as well, because it's really hard to when you're tall and long and have so much more body to move. But when you're able to sink your hips, when you're able to change direction, when you're able to close on the ball really quickly, I can normally tell, like, okay, I can work with you with this on any other aspect of the game, but I know you have the athletic potential to become something a lot greater.
What happens when you see a guy that, clearly has that physical capability, has like really fluid hips, has the ability to change directions really quickly, but when you watch them kind of on the field and, they run a fast 40 or whatever, when you watch them on the field, they seem hesitant. Like, it's very clear that they have that ability and they don't use it that often, whether it's at corner or at safety or one of these positions where you're dealing kind of with a lot of open space. They kind of either trigger late or they're kind of waiting before they kind of burst or accelerate. What do you do with those guys who clearly have that athletic ability, but either don't trust their eyes or are waiting to confirm, or what is it?
I think the first thing that I ask is how long have they been playing the position? That when you think about guys that are a little hesitant to trust their eyes, when you think of guys that are a little bit late to react, you think of guys who are relatively new because you're so busy thinking, oh, what if I do this wrong? What if I do this? What if I do that? When I was playing football, my coach would always be like, if you're going to be wrong at 100%. So I'd much rather for a guy to click and close immediately. But for guys that you see that athleticism and that athletic potential, I think for me, it's just getting them reps. If you believe in the athleticism and how it'll translate to the NFL, I think you just get them time and get them the ability to just go out and play, because you can't whiteboard up playing faster. You can teach and you can watch as much film as you want to, but at the end of the day, you got to get in between those hash marks and you got to go play football. So I think for that, I would just say, like, if you believe in the athleticism and believe in the potential and you can see the fluidity and the ease of movement on tape, just let them go get reps. Let them go play.
Hell yeah. How important is it to find, because we're talking about some guys at both of these positions where we might want to wait and develop them a little bit. There's not a lot of room on the roster for those kinds of guys, right? And so they have to play special teams. Maybe less at defensive tackle, but a lot more at cornerback, right? When that guy doesn't have special team snaps in college, but they're clearly at the NFL level a developmental guy, how do you go about assessing their capacity to be effective on special teams?
Again, I think it kind of comes down to their ability to move and their ability to add on as a special teamer early in their career. I think with a guy like Dallas Turner, who didn't really play a lot of special teams late in his career at Alabama, there's not a lot of reps, so you got to make your hay somehow. And he played special teams before constantly getting added on into the rotation. I think if a guy is an easy mover, if he's fluid, if he's a great athlete, you can tell him to go play special teams and you can teach him how to play there as you continue to develop him at corner or safety, So I think the lack of special teams reps early in the draft, I'm not super worried about. But if you're drafting guys day 3, you would like to see them have a little bit more special teams experience, because that's how those guys make a roster.
Hell yeah. So I think one thing that I kind of pay attention to, whether it's at linebacker or cornerback or safety, for these special teams guys, to me, it seems like willingness to tackle is a little bit more important. It's always important at linebacker, generally quite important at safety, pretty important at corner, but it's a priority on special teams, right? If you're going to do kickoff coverage, you have to hit. Is there a guy, when you kind of watch these 3rd, 4th round guys, clearly developmental guys, they might have the athleticism, they might have the coverage skills. Is there a guy where you're like, hey, he's a good developmental guy, but there's not room on my roster because he's not willing to tackle? Does that impact your valuation?
Yeah, I think it definitely comes up in evaluation. If you're not willing to tackle and you're a day 3 guy, there's nothing that you can really do unless you're the best return man ever and you just don't want to tackle at all. You probably should be playing on the other side of the ball. So I think especially with how defense has changed, we've gone away from a lot of the cover 3 where you're getting your corners out of the run fit. You think about a Brian Flores defense, you have to be able to tackle. Not only be able to tackle, but tackle on an island. It is you and the ball carrier, and you got to be the one to make the tackle. When teams play as much cover 2, as much quarters, you have to be able to come up, especially as corner, and be able to actually willing to tackle. Like, I think that's something that sort of gets misconstrued as like, you can be a tackler with bad technique, but if you at least want to and show an effort as a tackler, I can teach technique, but I can't teach want to, So
right.
I think, especially later in the draft, you have to be a good tackler. You have to do something to add special teams value, and being a good tackler is among those things.
So with that in mind, let's knock some 22-year-olds. Let's get nasty. Who doesn't do that in the late rounds?
Who doesn't tackle in the late rounds? It's tough because I think a lot of those guys, especially at corner, that don't have the massive, like, overwhelming athleticism. Mm-hmm. Those guys have to be able to tackle. So you'll see those guys like a Robert Longerbeam from Rutgers. Incredible name, fantastic tackler. You can play him on special teams. I think a guy like Mello Dotson from Kansas, not as good of a tackler as his teammate Kobe Bryant, but I think it's different. It's difficult for him because he shows that he wants to be a good tackler. It's just sometimes you just lose. Sometimes you just get hit, and it's like I see it and I see the vision. I need you to eat a carb. I need you to put some weight on the bones. I think there's some guys that Za Frazier from UTSA, another one of those height, weight, speed. Naturally, like the Requel and Zion McCollum,
right,
where just the athleticism pops off the tape. I would like to see him be a little better as a tackler because, again, you can talk yourself into the athleticism. You can talk yourself into, oh, this guy jumps out the gym, incredibly fast, long. You can see it, but it's like, all right, I need you to do some big boy stuff here. So I think he's one of those guys where I want to believe more, but I'd like to see him put on a little more oomph as a tackler.
All right. And I think that when some of these guys kind of fall out of the draft, there's this safety. I think it was like not Drod Holloman. I don't know. There's this safety who led the FBS in like interceptions and like fell out of the draft entirely. It's because he like refused to tackle. I think the Steelers ended up grabbing him, which is kind of a funny team of all the teams to grab a guy, but undrafted free agent that led the league in interceptions. Makes sense. And he just like never made like the starting, I don't think he was even the primary backup at safety. I think people kind of underrate how critical it can be for you to just stick a guy, right? For you to be able to like, and not even like be good at it, but just to, because I think like we knock players for like missed tackles, and that's fair. You got to be better at tackling. But at least if you miss a tackle, you're slowing the guy down and someone else has an opportunity, right? If you don't want to tackle, Jesus.
Yeah, like it's a contact sport. As much as you can say corners are not paid to tackle, eventually you are going to have to tackle, especially in this version of the NFL where yards after the catch is so important and teams are just hitting defenses with glance routes, crossing routes, and screens. You got to be able to come up, and if you're not going to make the tackle, at least slow them down and gang tackle him. So you have to be able to tackle on an island and tackle in space. I even think, to an extent, Azaria Thomas has a little bit of an issue with tackling in space because he's just like, he sees it and he's ready to do it, and then he's just late to it. And it's like, you're right there. It's there. Go get him. And he's like, what am I doing? And I just just do it. Just go.
Some of it, I mean, like some of it is just kind of how you're wired, right? Like your brain, I mean, for most people, most of the time, you're not wired to just hit somebody at a moment's notice with your head, right? Which don't hit with your head, but I think you know what I mean. But like, it's really difficult to turn that governor off for a lot of players, even if they've been doing it for like 6, 7, 8 years. And I think that is a really difficult thing, if not impossible thing to change by the time, especially if you've had a lot of experience on the defensive side of the ball, to try to like get out of people, to like say, hey, as soon as you see it, hit it. Right? Like you can't be thinking about whether you want to make the tackle. You have to have come into this already wanting to have made it instead of making a decision. Right. And I think that is just a really difficult thing to overcome.
Yeah, it's so difficult because, like you said, we kind of have to remember that these are people. You're gonna end up thinking like, oh gosh, like he's actually coming at me. Like I actually got to go make a tackle now, and it's easy to go like watch it from your couch. Like, yeah, you got to make that tackle, but then like when it's actually game time and you actually got to go make that tackle in full speed, like in live game reps, like you can't just show up to the game one day and be ready to tackle. Like that's not something that you can just roll out of bed and you're ready to go hit somebody. Because it takes getting hit. It takes actually doing it. So a lot of these guys, especially at corner, they're being taught now, especially with how the college game has changed with a lot of RPOs. Again, they're involving a lot more yak, like how the NFL is. You're going to see a lot more of these guys, especially at the top of the draft, be more ready and willing to be tacklers. But it's such an acquired, like you gotta go do it. Nobody just wakes up a willing tackler.
So with that in mind, before we get to some of the other positions that like the Vikings might need to address, are there any guys that you see talked about as a day 3 guy where you're like, what are you guys talking about? This guy rules. I would totally draft him round 2, early round 3 or something like that. Is there anybody that like pops out where you're like, I don't get it? What am I missing that everyone is putting him in, the 4th, 5th round?
The one guy that stands out to me for that is David Walker from Central Arkansas. I know, again, Central Arkansas, I get it, but he didn't just play well against that level of competition. He dominated against the level of competition that he was against, and he's built sort of fire hydrant-y. He's like 6 feet, 265 pounds, but the ability to get under guys with leverage and just blow them out the water using speed to power, that's something that translates. The power translates. And he had a good week at the Senior Bowl where he was able not only to knock guys back with power, but also show a little bit more athleticism and bend to the edge. I think he's a guy that I'd be willing to take a shot on as developmental, like round 3 guy, because we've seen speed to power win in the NFL immediately as a rookie. So if you have a guy that can do that, I would say go for it. Another guy that I think kind of fits into that bill is DJ Giddens, who, again, other side of the ball, plays running back, but I think that he's one of those guys where I keep seeing like he's going to be a day 3 guy, he's going to be a day 3 steal, and I'm like, he should be going on day 2 fairly easily. He ran great at the combine. I did not think he was going to pull out a 4.4 or I think a mid 4.4 40-yard dash. I thought he was more of a 4.5 guy, but he's got quick feet. He's able to run between the tackles. He's just a reliable back who's going to be able to run between the tackles. He's got the explosiveness that I think I was looking for, and you just got to watch the Colorado tape for DJ Giddens. I hate to pick on him, but Shiloh Sanders did not look like he should have been on the same field as DJ Giddens. There were so many just highlight reel plays that you can just go, oh yeah, that's an NFL running back. So those are the 2 guys that I'm just like, I see the vision for these guys, and I'd be willing to take them on day 2.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the running back position. This is supposed to be one of the most stacked running back classes in recent memory, right? Like, I think the quote I keep going back to, which I'm sure the listeners are kind of annoyed by how often I go to it, but I think it was a Jeremy Fowler piece. He's quoting a scout or an executive who said, it's like if you took 2 running back classes together and smushed them into one class. It feels like you're going to get guys on day 3 that in other years might go day 2 and stuff like that. I know you're a run game matters truther. I know that you love running backs. in addition to DJ Giddens, who are some guys, especially because like the Vikings seem pretty committed to this Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason combo to start, but will probably want a long-term guy because Ty Chandler is just not working out. Aaron Jones is getting up there in age. If you can develop a guy, that'd be great. Who are guys like early day 3, maybe even later day 3, that you feel like can slot into an every down role, not just like a scat back or a power back, but potentially like, so not your Devin Neals, right? An every down role.
Yeah, I think the first guy that stands out, especially for the Vikings, is Damian Martinez from Miami. And what stands out about him is he's a bigger back, but he plays so patiently. The footwork and the short area burst it's so cool to watch because you can see him kind of picking and choosing. Like, okay, I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go here. It's like watching a quarterback go through his progressions to get 1 to 2 to 3. That's like watching Damian Martinez kind of just jump cut in the different areas. I made the remark that he must have looked up to Le'Veon Bell as a runner growing up because it's sort of
nice.
how he runs.
Okay.
It's very similar in that patience. He is not fast. That's the biggest knock on Damian
Notice
Martinez.
that. Yeah, I was kind of curious when you brought him up, but like not everybody's a home run hitter.
Yeah, he's noticeably not fast, but he has, again, the short area burst. He's a singles and doubles hitter. And so I think he can become an every down back, especially if he can improve a little bit as a pass catcher. I think he's more than good enough as a pass blocker. He was really good at that at the Senior Bowl. So I think he is a guy that I really am intrigued by because he has experience in wide zone. When he was at Oregon State, they majored in outside zone, wide zone, and he was really good at that. Comes to Miami, is a little bit more duo, a little bit more gap scheme, and he's able to succeed in that as well. So he's really scheme versatile. It's just it might take him a little bit to get to top speed. My next guy that I think will be really interesting for the Vikings actually is Basho Tootin from Virginia Tech. He is
the fumbler.
Yes, he is probably the best athlete at the position for in the running back class, which is insane to say considering all the great running backs in this class. But former track standout, I think he had the fastest 40 of any running back in this class. But when you think about his ability to hit home runs on outside zone, when he sees that track and he sees that lane open, he is gone immediately. He gets from 0 to 60 incredibly quick. I think he's an effort blocker as a pass protector, but that's because he's a little bit on the smaller side, but he also can add on as a receiver in the passing game. So I think that'd be another guy that really stands out on day 3. The last guy I think probably should go on day 2. I'd pick him on day 2, but his age and size might knock him down the board. That's RJ Harvey from UCF. He is one of my favorite running backs in this class. He transferred from Virginia after committing to Virginia as a quarterback, transferred to UCF, and became the program leader in career touchdowns. He's such great contact balance. He's like 5'8", 205, but his legs and his lower body are so big that it just takes a whole lot of people to bring him down. He's got such nice feet and footwork, the ability to get downfield immediately. He's a great help in the passing game. It's just, again, he's a senior, so he's a little bit of an older prospect, and he's 5'8", so maybe 5'8" on a good day. The combine lists him at 5'8".
Yeah,
the combine lists him at 5'8". He's probably closer to 5'7", but I think that he's one of my favorite prospects in this class. He's just such a fun player to go and watch. He'll beat you with elusiveness. He wins with running people over. And he truly did carry a UCF offense that had no answers outside of him at all.
Yeah, I think Basho Tootin's kind of interesting. Like I mentioned, he has like a bit of a fumbling problem. Now, you mentioned there are size concerns. And the two guys that you brought up having size concerns, I want to put it into a little bit of context because very often when we're talking about running backs with size concerns are 180, 190. But because I asked this question in the context of an every down guy, you gave me guys that are 205, 206. So I just want to give the listeners context. We're not talking about your Dree Archer or even your Jerick McKinnons. We're talking about guys that for an every down back, which you find 211, 215, 220, they're smaller, right? Because they're 206. But we're not talking about 180, 190 pound guys. I just wanted to put that out there.
They're thick built. You know,
Yes.
so when you look
they're
at
shorter,
these guys-
they're thick. Yeah.
like, watching RJ Harvey at the Senior Bowl, the first thing I said was like, "Damn, his legs are huge."
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, so I think that's kind of like a good piece of context to get in on some of these running backs. Again, great running back class. I think there's a lot of value to be had by waiting here a little bit because you don't need a starter. But I did want to talk a little bit about the guard position. So the Vikings have mentioned that they wanted to give some grace to Blake Brandel, which is not a huge compliment or a ton of confidence in the left guard position. But
Y'all be easy on him.
whoa, hey. But yeah, so the Vikings are giving him some grace, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to provide real competition, because I don't think Michael Juergens is going to be that guy. So who in the guard class, late day 2, again, I'm saying late day 2 because I'm not talking about round 2 because the Vikings don't have a second round pick. That could change. They could trade, right? But for right now, kind of late day 2, mid day 3, guards that might fit. The Vikings aren't a pure outside zone team in the same way that a lot of Shanahan McVay guys are, but they are an outside zone team. They just happen to do a bunch of duo on top of that. Who are some guards that you think might be able to fit that, might provide some camp competition or might provide kind of long-term, respectability of the position?
I think the first guy that stands out, especially on day 3, is Jackson Slater from Sacramento State. He's another guy that kind of came around late too. He played well at the Senior Bowl. I didn't think he was dominant, but with Gray Zabel there kind of being a small school lineman everybody was going towards, I kind of went back and watched, and I was like, oh, wow, Jackson Slater had a really good week. And then I went and watched his film, and I was like, oh, wow, Jackson Slater's actually really good. And I think the thing that stands out with Slater is, one, he's always looking to finish blocks. He's always looking to find work in the passing game. So if he's not covered up and he doesn't have a pass rusher, he's going to go try and deck somebody. He's going to go clean somebody up. I think the movement skills stand out a lot for Slater as well. I think that he's able to cut off the backside, especially on those zone runs. And he's shown the foot quickness to really be able to get after a lot of guys, especially at the guard position. And he has that ability to anchor. I think he can anchor pretty well. I think that he has shown that he can be someone who, when he's hit with power, he can drop his weight and he can slow that down. My biggest thing with Slater is sometimes he'll overset or he'll get too aggressive trying to block the outside move, and he'll end up lunging and he'll give up moves either across his face or they'll just swat his hands down. But I think for a team like Minnesota, it makes a lot of sense on day 3. He's a guy that, again, he can come in, play guard, he can play center, but I think he has that versatility that you want in a day 3 guy, that you can go, all right, we'll slot you in at guard. If we need you to play center, you can play center, but we're going to just see what we got here. And I think another guy like that is Clay Webb from Jacksonville State, former 5-star recruit, went to Georgia, transferred to Jacksonville State. Again, played well at Senior Bowl, but he was another guy that I came around to later in the process. And I'm like, oh, like this guy can really play. Like I have a little bit of concerns about some of the movement skills. I think sometimes he can be a little bit limited on the backside of those zone runs, but in terms of duo, in terms of that power, I think he can displace guys. And then he's shown the ability to win as a pass protector. A little earlier than where I think Slater and Clay Webb are going to go is Miles Frazier from LSU. He's kind of gone under the radar because the other LSU players, Will Campbell and Emory Jones, are both good. It's tough to overshadow Will Campbell when he's going to be a top 10 pick, but he stood out in Mobile at the Senior Bowl just off of the athleticism and the traits. And for a Minnesota team that values athleticism and those athletic tools, I think he can be a guy where you can talk yourself into him later on in the draft, early day 3, where you can go, all right, we'll see what we got. He's a great mover. I think he's shown the versatility to play guard or tackle, which will really help his stock a lot. So I'm really excited to see what he does and where he falls in this draft class, because he comes from LSU, so he has the pedigree, but a lot of that positional versatility, he was moved around, kind of went underrated. But I think you can talk yourself into a guy like him on day 3 because of the movement skills and because of that ability to really get after guys with his athleticism.
That makes sense. I think Vikings fans would be a little bit annoyed to get another LSU offensive lineman after Ed Ingram failed out so spectacularly, but that's kind of not how it works. So if that happens, they'll have to deal. What's kind of interesting about somebody like a Jackson Slater, who's 318 pounds, or at least weighed in at the combine at 318 pounds, you mentioned that he's like a really good mover. And I think a lot of people, when they hear something like that, might like take a look at something like a 40 time to confirm it, 5.01 seconds. That's like pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. But I think a lot of people don't understand, like, at 320 or so pounds, like, that's actually quite good. That's like very good. And the important thing in terms of like taking a look at combine metrics, to the extent that they can help, is that at guard, it seems like short shuttle is one of the more important positions to take a look at. Now, he didn't run that at the combine, but he did at his pro day, and he ran a 4.7 second short shuttle, which in context is, for among all guards, a little bit faster than average, but among 320-pound guards, quite fast. And so athletically, he slots in as one of the more athletic guards in the class, especially if you kind of get rid of some of the people that are projected as tackles, like Caleb Rogers or Drew Moss or the Duluth guy, Aiden Williams. He's like the 5th or 6th in kind of some of these comprehensive metrics for guards. So like you mentioned, like we're taking a look at guys that have the ability to move pretty well. Clay Webb is another example of that. You mentioned that. I think it does kind of bring up an interesting conversation, because you mentioned like Will Campbell, you mentioned who is, by the way, near the top of these guard specific lists. But, you know, we're taking a look at some of these tackles, and a lot of people are like, I don't know that there are that many offensive tackles in this class, whether that's because of the movement skills of these guys, or with Will Campbell, this weird arm length thing that now there's like 3 different measurements to go off of. What's kind of your take when it comes to taking a look at arm length, or even just generally taking a look at a tackle and seeing, you know, hey, I think this guy's more of a guard?
I think it's not just arm length, because people will look and go, oh, sub 34-inch arms, guard, and then just throw it away. And I think that's a little bit of a disservice to the players. Not just the length or the lack of length, it's how you use it. And I think with Campbell, he has shown that he can use his lack of length at tackle, but some of his biggest flaws when it comes to playing tackle, he kind of drifts a little bit as a pass protector. So when I talk about drifting, he'll kind of go out too far to try and catch an edge rusher in the passing game, because he doesn't have that arm length that is kind of that equalizer. So you can go out and get a guy real easy when you have these longer arms, but when you're a little bit shorter, a little bit more compact, you got to go out and get him with your foot quickness. And I think he kind of drifts a little bit, and I think his foot speed is just fine. I don't think it's overwhelmingly athletic, but I think all those issues and all those cons become null and void if he plays guard. And I think that that's where we kind of lack the nuance when it comes to talking about guys who should play guard at the next level. It's not just lack of arm length. It's how you move and the ability to win despite not having the arm length. And in Campbell's case, I think that he could be a good tackle. I'm not going to say he can never be a good tackle, because playing tackle in the SEC and doing really well, I mean, there's a road to success. But all the issues that he has would be much better served, and all the issues would become non-issues at guard. So I think when it comes to the arm length stuff, it's more about how they use it instead of just, oh, short arm, guard, close the book.
All right. I've kept you for an hour or a little bit less once we account for the leaf blower. So I think we're good here. Thanks for coming on, man. Where can people find you?
You can find me at SB Nation. I think I just say a football writer. I think that's technically my title. Anywhere where there's football being played, I'm probably talking about it. You can find me on social media, on Twitter at Acosta32_JP, on Blue Sky at, I think, JP Acosta32JP. There's no underscore in that one. But make sure to follow, see what I'm doing, see where I'm going. And I got a few cool stories about the draft coming out this week, so make sure to look out for that. Yeah,
follow this guy. He's on a rocket ship, man. You got to get in early. All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, we're back. We're going to discuss a couple of arrivals and departures. This has not been a busy offseason at all for Minnesota, but there have been a couple of arrivals and departures over the last couple of weeks. The biggest one is that Nahshon Wright was cut, and he is the last lingering thread of the trade. I believe with the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's right.
The last one.
Obviously, I don't have like a lot to add to this.
No, this is more just tying up loose ends to say that we did it. So Nahshon Wright was cut. He did not do much last year, and but the Vikings did end up signing Rondale Moore, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, Rondale Moore. I think anybody who watched, especially the year before he declared for the draft at Purdue, I want to say it's one of the central Midwest schools. But I'm pretty sure it was Purdue. Really outstanding, super explosive, incredible freshman year too. I think a lot of people were really excited about what a pure athlete he was. Obviously, in Arizona, it looked like there were flashes of it. Didn't super work out. Coming off of an injury right now, I don't know that we're going to get a ton out of him or anything like that, but it's like one of those signings where you see the upside, you kind of understand like if it works out, what that might look like, and how, if everything kind of comes together, how that might produce something, really outstanding, right? He did a bunch of kick returns in college. I think his freshman year, he was like the leader in yards per return or something like that in the FBS. And while I don't think he did that in the NFL, it's something. No, he's got a couple of return yards in the NFL as well. It's something that is worth kind of thinking about, as the Vikings don't really have a lot of answers at either punt or kick return. Given that his movement style is very kind of similar to a lot of really strong punt returners in the NFL, and that he's got some history as a kick returner. I think that that's an area where the Vikings are exploring. So the less I think about his contributions on offense, although I think a lot of people could legitimately get excited about his yards after catch capability, and I think more about adding some intriguing names to the return battle, which does not have a lot of very intriguing names on it right now. So I don't know, some opportunities here for special teams upside. But not like a ton more to add to this, because it's not like somebody who has had an outstanding, career or a history of health to kind of recommend himself. Like he didn't play at all last year. So, he got injured in training camp. So I don't know, kind of cool, but not a ton to add beyond that.
No, but by the way, you were correct that he is from Purdue. So
great.
Just.
By the way, look up his, not like you, James, but just kind of generally, look up his pro day stats, anybody. They are like obscenely good. Like the best in almost every category except like one of the two jumps. Like it's either vertical or broad, where he's merely above average and the rest are just like some of the best we've ever seen. Outstanding athlete.
Well, let's go around the league, and I think the biggest thing that came out of the owners' meeting was that the kickoff rule has been moved to the 35-yard line now, which I'm going to sound like an old fogey here, but we're creeping a little. We're getting a little far. This seems a bit much.
I personally don't think so. I think that this is what they should have done from the beginning. So when they were talking about implementing this, they were essentially talking about implementing a mirrored version or an identical version to the XFL's kickoff rule. But at the last minute, they got cold feet and moved the touchback away from where it was in the XFL. And also moved the kick, I think. So it was a little bit different. I think it bothered some of the XFL play designers a lot, and it did not end up having the intended effect, which is to have a ton of returns. Although in the second half of the season, we did get an increase in the number of kickoff returns that we got, and in the playoffs, we didn't get a ton of returns, but the evidence about the kickoff safety was validated. So we got a bunch of really good data from the XFL over the past couple of years that they implemented this particular kickoff. I think according to Sam Schwartzstein, there were no concussions on any of the new kickoff, which is crazy, given the really high injury incidence rate in general and the concussion rate specifically on this play in the old format. So they moved the kicker back. They had a different touchback. Now they didn't. I don't think they didn't move the kicker back for the NFL, but they did move the touchback to increase the number of returns. So it kind of validates the player safety element of it, and increasing the number of returns, or rather forcing teams to kick short instead of long, and force those returns. I like that. So I think we're going to see a lot more variance in team starting position. We're going to see quality at special teams matter a little bit more. I like it. Obviously, it's not like the biggest rule change in the world. They did discuss, again, banning the tush push. And I don't understand like what that's really like. Obvious. It just seems obvious. It's like sour grapes, right? Like it's not like the idea that this is like an injury concern over like a normal quarterback sneak is weird to me.
If it was an injury concern, the Eagles would have more injuries. Like,
right. Like, I don't think anyone has been injured on this play. So what are we talking about?
Between that and the reseeding thing, which there was some comment about how that was actually like being fed through like the NFL. Like the NFL kind of wants to do that. That's interesting.
It's kind of cool, actually. So Pro Football Talk wrote it up and linked the original article from Jeremy Reisman, friend of the show. His article at Pride of Detroit that actually covered this, that ended up essentially breaking the news, even though the owner just kind of said it in a public venue, that the NFL talked to the Lions about the Lions introducing this potential rule change, which, mind you, like it was Amon-Ra St. Brown, who protested the way the seating worked before the game against the Vikings. Obviously, it didn't matter because they ended up winning. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but that did happen.
The last 2 weeks of the that the Vikings played, bit of a blur. I just remember it abruptly ended. That's all I really recall.
No, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so long ago, right? So. I sure, right? Like that all kind of tracks. I don't know that is super meaningful because a team still has to want to do that, but cool.
I don't know. For me, the getting back to the kickoff, it just feels like, and I realize this does like bring more importance to the kicker, which I've been clamoring for in my life over the past 10 years. So I get that this is going to be sound hypocritical, but especially like fourth quarter with the trying to like make comebacks, it just feels like it just puts the offense in another position to be able to like get in field goal range very quickly, which I realize is, the defense has to do something about, but it just feels like you're just like moving them even closer into range. I don't know. That's my old man rant, and I may even take it out because it's not even like a fully formed thing. I'm just tired. I'm so tired.
The pushback against this, I think, is that we'll also see a number of kicks returned that'll put things behind the 10 and even behind the 5. Like I think we're going to see a wider variance. It will improve field position for the offense, but I don't think a little bit. And I think that we're going to see a lot of teams kind of start with the ball at like their own 15 or something.
That's possible. Well, the other thing that we talked about Aaron Rodgers earlier and how he's been linked to every team that could possibly want a quarterback. I'd like to see him kick. But I'm very much of the belief he's not going to sign until training camp. I think that'll be very funny. But Greg Olsen, not Tom Brady, was nominated for an Emmy this year.
Yeah. So Fox's number 2 got nominated for him. And okay, so there are people whose like beat it is to cover this kind of thing, which I can't knock too much because that's pretty close to what my beat has sometimes become. But like a lot of people will talk about like, how great Greg Olson is, which I agree, and how bad Tom Brady was to begin the year, which I agree. And then also how Tom Brady has improved over the course of the season, especially in the final month of the season heading into the playoffs. And I don't agree. And I don't think he did a good job during the Super Bowl. And I found it pretty interesting given that Greg Olson has been cut off from, being in the top pair of broadcasters, which prevents him from doing Super Bowls the next time Fox gets a Super Bowl, which is going to be a while. So yeah, it kind of sucks for him, but it's kind of funny that ends up being, the scenario, because it's very clear that he's like the better of the two broadcasters. It's not close.
They're going to keep shoving Tom Brady down our throats, and hopefully he's better next year. And I know that it took a while for Aikman to get reasonable, but this is it is. You feel a little bad for Greg Olson at this point. Like you're really doing a great job. On the plus side, we seem to get Greg Olson more.
True. Yeah. No, that's the other side of that.
there's no curse of being the 330 or whatever for Fox. Like, no, we'll be good. Well, let's get into the mailbag, and the first question is from Francis Ford Copium, who asks, "Why have people been so weird about JJ McCarthy starting next year?"
They've been really weird about it. It's interesting because the weird just kind of goes in both directions. So, friend of the show, Thor Nystrom, has been weird in one direction, although we've seen a little bit less of it this month, probably because he's busy covering the draft. But he's like convinced essentially that JJ McCarthy is like on track to become a Hall of Famer, which for people who are not Vikings fans who listen to the show, of which there are surprisingly many, to remind you, JJ McCarthy has not played like an NFL snap. And so to be on track to be an NFL Hall of Famer is, I would argue, a little bit aggressive, right? I think that's fair to say, right?
Just a tad.
Yeah. Okay. This is a little optimistic.
He looked good in the preseason for that game.
Yeah. Yeah. The one game, right? But yeah, the other side of that is that people have been super weird, convinced that he's going to bust, convinced that he's going to fail, and that the Vikings are in the market for a quarterback, not just like Aaron Rodgers, right? But just like, and not just like in free agency, but also in the draft, which I find like perplexing, right? Like at least let the first round pick at quarterback play a game, because it's not as if he got benched, right? Like it'd be one thing if he played and he got benched, and even then, like that doesn't mean much. The current Vikings defensive coordinator was the head coach to a rookie quarterback who he benched, who then ended up having a couple of very productive years in Miami and may in the future. I don't know. People aren't very high on him, but he is like a franchise quarterback in the sense that he earns franchise money, he gets that contract and all that. So even a benched quarterback, or like Bryce Young finished the year pretty strong, right? Even a benched first round rookie is somebody that people typically just don't give up on. You have to be like Josh Rosen bad for that to happen, right? So I don't really know, and he didn't get benched, right? So I don't really know why people have been weird, but I think part of it's just like a recency bias thing. Like I haven't seen him play, and that's enough for me. I need movement. The idea of sitting still is difficult for me. I may have ADHD. I don't know. Like
there's plenty of potential options to go with. It's not like he played it's not like he played a ton of snaps in the preseason. He immediately got hurt. But there's plenty of tape on him and looks good, looks interesting. And it's the problem that we talked last time about, or at least before, about how the Vikings fans are complain that the national media doesn't pay attention, and then when they do, they completely miss the point, and they completely miss this has always been the plan to have JJ McCarthy be the person who like plays next year. Like he was potentially going to like have a competition with Sam Darnold this year. Like there was like a roadmap in place for all of this, and people just like to hear themselves talk. I say this as a podcaster. Trade Kirk asks, what positions should be drafted within our first 2 draft picks, regardless of trade?
I mean, I don't know if I would be that definitive, but for the purposes of answering the question, cornerback, no question about that. I don't think anyone's surprised. And then, I mean, I guess I wouldn't be upset with a defensive lineman, but I guess guard. It was not like a remarkable vote of confidence for Kevin O'Connell to be like, hey, and with Blake Brandel, you just got to give him some grace. Like, not, hey, he played a lot better than I think a lot of you think, and there's kind of a lot behind the scenes that, you know, makes you kind of understand that that's not really a good evaluation of his play in this. It was nothing like that. It was just, hey, you got to forgive and forget sometimes. Like, what? So,
not making me feel better there, Coach.
Yeah. So, yeah. I would maybe a guard. If you're going to be so attached to drafting a position, it would be a cornerback and then a guard. But I would be okay with being open to a lot of possibilities. If you're in the second round and a Marion Hampton is there for whatever reason, I don't love running backs, and I would understand passing on the guy, but I also would understand, you know, drafting the guy. So, you know, it's all pretty contextual.
Let's go to Miles Per Hour, who asks, with the Vikings having so few picks in the upcoming draft, a trade down seems extremely likely. If this is indeed the case, what teams do you think the Vikings would be attractive partners with, and what do you think the compensation could likely be?
So I put something together. So the Vikings pick 24 as well as their 139th overall pick for pick 34. So the second pick in the second round, pick 65, pick 219, and pick 246. So that's the New York Giants for, I don't know, Jackson Dart or whatever. Let's say the Giants draft Travis Hunter at the top of the draft. Cool. Well, they still don't have a quarterback. So they want to guarantee that they've got a 5th-year option for the rookie, and so they'll take somebody who would typically go in the second round in the first round, and that might be trading up from the second round for somebody like a Jackson Dart, or it could be Shedeur Sanders. Maybe he falls. It could be Jalen Milroe. They don't have, well, I guess they have Tyrone Tracy, but they don't have Saquon Barkley anymore, so they could use a quarterback that you could turn into a running back when he fails at quarterback. I don't know. But yeah, the Giants, and I used actually a new draft trade chart that is built kind of in the spirit of the Rich Hill trade chart, which is one that looked at the last 10 years of the history of trades in the NFL. It's from Anthony Reinhardt. And it's like the same thing. It essentially decomposes the pick values. And in one element that's different here is that there is a quarterback percentage tax attached to it. So it excluded trades for a quarterback, built the model, and then put them back in to see what the percentage you would charge for a quarterback premium, because that does seem to be the case, that NFL teams pay more when they're trading up for a quarterback. So that'll be linked in the show notes, but that's the trade chart that I used to try and figure out one way to get this kind of even, which is the Vikings give up a first-round pick and a fifth-round pick in order to get a second and a third and like a fifth and a sixth. Or two sevenths, actually. Sorry. Yeah.
The next question is from Ingram is in need of a new bit. Well, these things happen with his left foot, right hand, whatever. For Arif's GM corner, if you were an NFL GM, how would you ideally use the consensus big board, given you employ a team of scouts and coaches to evaluate and be football experts?
So the cool thing about the consensus big board is that it is broad and very general. For me, I would want my coaches and scouts to do like character work, background work, figure out stuff about like injuries and, arrest records and stuff like that. Like that would be an important element. They have to be private investigators. obviously, I would still want them to compose scouting reports and stuff like that. Like I want them to do that, and I would want them to compose a board, right? But for me, any board that they would compose would be very specific to the team and the coaching staff that I have in the building, right? And so what would be really useful about what they would do is they would get feedback from the coaches about the traits that they're looking for, the types of players that they're looking for, the roles that they're willing to fill, the players that you would kind of model themselves off of if you were to build a team across the entire NFL from scratch to fit what the scheme is and what you want them to do, right? And then identify kind of what problems you're trying to solve, whether it's a pass protection problem, whether it's a pass catching problem, whether it's stopping the run from the front four or from the second level, whatever. And kind of build a vision for ideal players at different positions and construct a board that way. And you're going to end up with a very small board. The New England Patriots used to do this a lot. And they don't draft very well. It's less like, hey, look at what they did, and more like you're going to end up with a small board just like the Patriots did. And what I would do is I would take this board in this rank order of players and I'd slot it up against the consensus big board to kind of see where there's a lot of value and kind of see where there's a lot of kind of reasons for caution. And I'd probably tag those players that are overvalued by my board as somebody that I'd be really excited about if they fell, but not somebody that I would be enthused about if they were at the pick slot that is also where the board is, right? And so I would kind of just use that as a way to identify which players I want to target, and then use the consensus board to figure out kind of what the market price of those players is going to be and what I would need to do to kind of get those players while also generating value. So I would still try to pick along the consensus board, but I would really only want to pick players that my scouts liked and that my coaches thought were really good fits. But you know, I would use the board to be, I would use my consensus board to be flexible around the inbuilt team board. You're still trying to get as many players that your team likes and that your scouting group likes, but you're going to be aware of the fact that as many experts as you have, it's very difficult to beat a group of 100 other experts who are watching the same film as you. So that's probably how I would approach it. I think that there's probably a lot of valid critiques to that approach, but that's kind of the framework for how I'd maybe want to set that up.
Nick Howard asks, what are your favorite draft prop bets?
Yeah, so I would caution people, to never gamble. Obviously, this show is against gambling, always has been.
Famously, longtime listeners of the show are aware of our anti-gambling stance.
Yeah, strong. Yeah.
If nothing else, we are not sponsored by any sort of gambling site. Just always like to point that out.
Right. See? And so our hands are clean. Second, I would make sure that if I was going to put bets down on the draft, which again, don't do, but if I were to do that, hypothetically, I would check market prices for every one of the bets that I'm making because they're radically different across sports. There's actually one reason that I don't think it makes a ton of sense to use Vegas odds in this particular circumstance or I shouldn't say Vegas anymore, sportsbook odds in this particular circumstance as a proxy for the accumulated knowledge the public has. Very often, betting markets can be quite good at that. And in areas where there's a lot of action, that's where you kind of see a lot of that play out. So it's really difficult to gain an edge gambling when it comes to the NFL because all of the market information has been priced in by hundreds of thousands of bets, right? Well, in NFL games anyway. But for the NFL draft, there's not that much movement, and the sports books themselves have a lot of uncertainty, and so they price in what's called a lot of juice, right? So in an NFL game, if you're betting on either side of even odds, it might be minus 105, which essentially means that you have to bet $105 in order to win $100. And so the remainder $5 on either side of that bet, assuming 50% of the money falls on one side of the bet and 50% falls on the other, that remaining $5 essentially is the profit that Vegas gets, right? Or the sportsbook gets. That juice, that profit, increases substantially in uncertain markets. And so if you had even odds for a prop bet in the NFL draft, they might be 110, they might be 115, they might be 120, and in some cases even up to 130. You'd have to bet $130 to get $100 on what they're pricing essentially as even odds. So be careful about that. But if you're going to do it, price the books against each other. Because there's a lot of instances where the books radically disagree. So if, for example, you think the first wide receiver to be drafted is Tet McMillan, Caesars Sportsbook has that as minus 160, which is you have to bet 160 to win 100. Whereas both MGM and FanDuel have it at minus 250, right? So you'd have to bet 250 to win 100. That's a substantially worse price. So you'd want to make that wager over at Caesars. But if you think it's Matthew Golden, both MGM and FanDuel have that at plus 170, which is you bet $100, win 170. Whereas Caesars has that at plus 120. So that's a bad market. So you'd want to bet it either MGM or FanDuel. So shop around if you're going to do that. Like number 3 overall pick odds, some of these are radically different. Travis Hunter at MGM is plus 225. At Caesars is plus 175. So if you think it's going to be Travis Hunter, bet it at plus 225 over at MGM. So that's number 1. Number 2, if I'm looking at these broadly, I would say I identified a couple here. This is as of April 8th. And mind you, I want to be very clear when I have not done much work on the consensus board yet. So these takes are not informed by the work I've done on the consensus board, which can be helpful for this kind of odds making. So I just want to make that clear. So I circled a couple of these based off of, I think these are MGM odds. So Mason Graham under 5.5. So I have him drafted before the 6th overall pick at minus 165 odds. Shedeur Sanders under 8.5. So I have him drafted before the 9th overall pick at plus 160. Now his odds have been falling. I don't think that really means much, but that's something to kind of keep track of. Ashton Genty, the Boise State running back, I have him as over 9.5. I think that he'll be drafted at the 10th pick or later. This is just a running back tax. I know that he's a very good running back. In fact, I love watching him. But I think that the combination of factors involved here are first that like a lot of these highly drafted running backs have not done a lot for their franchises. In fact, Saquon Barkley has done more for the second franchise he was at than the one that he was drafted to. The same thing with Christian McCaffrey, right? And like Bijan Robinson is very talented, has done a lot of really good stuff, has not really helped the Falcons win games. I think that's a combination of it. I think he's also not as versatile as somebody like Saquon Barkley. Or Christian McCaffrey. He's not a bad pass catcher, but he's not as much of one. And I think that's going to hurt him. So I think he's going to fall out of the top 10. So that's my take there. Tyler Warren, outstanding tight end for Penn State. I also have him at over 9.5. So Ashton Genty over 9.5 is plus 200. Tyler Warren over 9.5 is minus 150. So those aren't the same odds. You make a lot more money if I'm right about Ashton Genty than about Tyler Warren. Then I've got Matthew Golden over 17.5 at minus 165. I think the hype of him being the top wide receiver in the draft or being a really high quality wide receiver is not very good. I think that there was a timing error when it comes to the NFL Combine. And I think that his draft stock is built almost entirely around his official Combine time. And I think that that's silly. So I'm going to take the over on that. Colston Loveland, pretty good tight end. I don't think he's a first-round quality tight end. I have the over on 19.5 at plus 135. And then Jackson Dart, who I just had the Giants trading up for in the Viking spot, over 24.5, which means the Vikings are the pivot position for this one, at plus 165. I think there's a lot of talk about him being QB1. I don't think that that's not even QB1, just a first-round quarterback. I don't think that that's going to happen. So those are my props on that. There are probably other props out there that are interesting, like how many wide receivers are going to be drafted, how many quarterbacks are going to be drafted in the first round. And I think there's a 1.5 is the number for the first round. I wouldn't touch that unless I got really favorable odds on one side or the other. While I do think that Shedeur Sanders is going to get drafted in the top 10, if he doesn't get drafted in the top 10, I could see him falling like a rock. Not because I dislike him or anything like that, just because that seems to be kind of the way the NFL does quarterbacks right now. That's all.
Seems like there's a very real possibility of maybe not necessarily an Aaron Rodgers thing, but a Brady Quinn thing to happen to him.
Yeah, and just as handsome.
Aw. It's funny you mentioned that. I was going through one of the old things because I was trying to put together the April Patreon thing, and you spent quite a bit of time putting together the list of handsome NFL kickers. So
Yeah.
I was going through that. As you discussing the handsomeness of kickers. Like, oh yeah, that's literally something I was listening to earlier today.
There's one kicker on that list. It was pretty upsetting to have a take on and then have that kicker make the news.
Yeah, that. Let's go to, and by the way, there's not a lot of NFL stuff in this particular mailbag. We're about to cross the line into we're about to go off the rails. Nick Wilson asks, what teams should the Vikings impose trade tariffs on, and what rigorous mathematical formula will determine the rates?
I know a lot of people would want to pick the Packers here, and I get it. I understand, and I wouldn't even object if you chose them, right? I think that makes sense. I picked the Lions. I think that the Lions have grown a bit too big for their britches. I think it's time for the Lions to face the harsh reality of international politics. And I'm going to use a very similar formula to the one that was speculated about for tariffs and then confirmed in a denial by an administration official. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Always a good sign when something is confirmed in a denial.
Yeah, like they denied it and then they posted the equation that they used, and it turns out that equation was the one that was speculated on. So that's cool. So it would be points the Lions have scored minus the points that they have allowed in Vikings games over the total number of points that they've scored. So it's basically import, export, over export, right? Or over import, I guess was the actual equation. Doesn't matter here. I like points for, which is actually a little bit more generous to the Lions than they deserve. It should be divided by points against, but I'm feeling generous because I am not a protectionist. I'm only using this for negotiating leverage. What I'm negotiating for, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to hear their offers to end the tariffs. As for how the tariff operates, it would be any money that the Lions spend at all. They have to pay that percentage above the equation I just said.
Now, so what happens if they put in a retaliatory tariff?
Well, they can't. How are they going to make the Vikings spend more money? That doesn't make sense.
I'm asking these questions because they need to be asked.
No, I get it.
If they don't get asked,
as a host,
if they don't get asked, our stock and our team goes down. So I have
right, and then suddenly we're facing 104% tax rates. Who's to say?
Christian, I believe that's how that was pronounced in the thing, asks, what's the best category of sacrifice to make in order to ensure the Vikings play the Steelers in Ireland?
James, you want this so bad.
No, if I am convinced that if I successfully make it over to the UK and go to Ireland, go to London, whatever, the show has to end. Like, that's my arc.
It's the end of
That's it.
For people who are unfamiliar, and I would be shocked to find out that there's a ton of people who are unfamiliar. We have had four international shows, right? And James has not made a single one of them.
Well, the first one I wasn't invited to. First one I wasn't going to go anyway.
Okay. Invited is strong. You were part of the planning committee that did not include bringing you.
Yes. It was not feasible. It was not something I was going to try for. I was good. You and Dusty had a lovely time and picked up a lovely stuffed animal.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, I got COVID 2 days before my flight. That was rough. And the next one was last year.
Okay, so it's 3. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I was in rough shape and was trying to not deal with back surgery, which I didn't end up having to do, but it's still, I was still not in any position to, fly or be human. So yeah, I've missed a fair amount of time across the pond, and I'm convinced that if it goes to Ireland, I'm not going this year. That's not how this works. I'm smarter. I don't want to have to deal with whatever comes after this. Like it was COVID and it was nearly getting back surgery. I'm not dealing with a potential what if there. As for what to sacrifice, hope.
Let's see. Let's take a look at Celtic sacrifices.
This can only go well.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't actually. I was looking for animal sacrifices, and Wikipedia was like, "Hey, you meant human, right?" I was like, "No, but okay." I think we have to throw Luke Braun into a peat bog. Is what I'm learning.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I'm okay. Good with that. That seems. Great. I was on their Discord the day that everything went nuts again. So apparently they do that once a year. I don't need Luke Braun can go into the bog. That's fine.
Excellent.
Speaking of, Luke Braun's dad asks, how does Arif feel about now picking up some of the same cadences as Luke Braun in his football talk? Emphasizing one word really hard as trademark Luke. It has now become an Arif thing as well.
James, I'm going to need you to comment on that because I haven't noticed any of that, and I don't listen to Luke's podcast. So what's going on here?
I don't hear it. I'm aware of Luke's speaking mannerisms. I don't, which isn't to say I listen to it a ton. I don't hear it. So I think this is just a way to potentially get in your head.
Yeah, I'm not falling for it, Luke Braun's dad. Take your March Madness winnings and leave.
Yeah, Luke Braun's dad. Deal with it. From D's for Arif's Sumo Corner. I really should have read this question before I decided to do it. For Arif's Sumo Corner, can you share your thoughts on March's Basho and the playoff matchup between Takayasu and Onosato? Always the bridesmaid and never the bride. Am I right?
I think you got real close, James. I don't think I'm going to get any closer. So let's see. Mission accomplished on the pronunciations. Yeah. So what Deez is referring to here is that Takayasu's history has always been kind of climbing the mountaintop a little bit and then kind of falling back down. I don't know about bridesmaid, never the bride. I don't think he ever actually got that close except this particular time. But, he's been promoted to Ozeki, and then he's had losing streaks that have moved him entirely outside of Ozeki, which is just awful. I would hate for that to happen to anyone, to just kind of fail out that much, and had to climb his way all the way back up into the Ozeki ranks. Has had a couple of tournaments where he starts off strong and then sustains an injury and then can't finish. There's one tournament where he had a really astounding chance heading into the final days of the tournament with a really strong winning record. I think just one loss. And then he was matched up against like 3 Yokozuna in a row, the 3 Yokozuna that existed at the time, and lost to all of them. And ended up just not doing enough to improve his rank, just like stuff like that. So that's probably the history that Deez is referring to. But you can watch the match on YouTube, Takayasu no Nosato over the Honba show. It's a good one. I really enjoyed watching it. I watched it when it happened, which is crazy, not for the purposes of this question, but like when it happened. And then when we got this question, I watched it again. Really good. Really looked like Onosato was about to lose too at one point, and was able to recover. So Onosato wins. I think a couple of people are saying this puts him on track to become a Yokozuna. I think he would need another really strong performance. But since we've been asked questions about sumo on the show, I've been a huge fan of Onosato. And so kind of him validating that, first of all, crazy good for the bid. That's wild. But second, you love to see it. You love to have a hot take on someone that you've got no information on, and have it be right. That rules. It's a sports writer's dream.
Exactly. It's basically Case Cookus, but on a much bigger, I'd say on a much bigger level, but
much grander scale, I think.
Yeah. So the next question is about the NBA, and it's fun because of all of the ridiculousness that seems to be going on. The question from Joe Green is, what the heck is going on in the NBA Western Conference?
Yeah, okay, so James is going to answer this question.
As much as I can.
Yeah, but like, my view of it has been it's just been bonkers. Like, it's just like in random group chats, different group chats, people will like post a tweet and I'll be like, is that like fake? Like what's going on? And no, I guess the Nuggets fired their head coach.
Yep.
And then also someone mentioned that Shams, who always breaks this news, also broke the news that either the Nuggets or the Grizzlies, in addition to firing their head coach, which the Grizzlies did a little bit before the Nuggets did, also fired their general manager, but then he deleted the tweet, so I guess that didn't happen. I don't know what's going on. I thought the Nuggets were good except against the Timberwolves, so I Googled the Nuggets, which, if anyone remembers like a Twitter controversy from like 4 years ago, turns out you need to make sure you don't have a racist autocorrect when you type the word Nuggets. Do you remember that?
I do, yes.
Yeah. It's like, hey, man, you said that was autocorrect, and now I've got a lot of questions for why autocorrect thought you meant that word. But yeah, so I Googled the Nuggets, and it turns out I was right. They are good. They're like fourth in the conference. They're the fourth seed right now.
Yeah.
And they're like not that many games back from the first seed, but importantly, they're like 1 or 2 games back from the second seed is the thing that's really getting me. Is like, you're real. Like, I don't, what? So Jokic just had a 61-point night.
Yeah. So the first 2 seeds are all locked up. Thunder and Rockets. Number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all within 2 games of each other. It's 48 wins, 47, 47, 46, 46, 46.
Oh.
It is absolutely ridiculous. We're still in like the middle of the week, so like there's still a chance for seedings to be like changed by Saturday. So it's absolutely wild. The Nuggets are nuts. Yeah, this is absolute insanity. I love it. You can't plan around what's going to happen for the playoffs at this point because it's so tight. Like, there are like tiebreaker scenarios and everything. It's wonderful. As for what's going on, the baby witches are responsible for some ridiculous stuff over here, and we are all enjoying the fallout of it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so Neil Payne over, and I'll put a link in the show notes. Neil Payne, who I do follow on Substack, made this point that since like 2012, 2013, excluding shortened seasons like the COVID season, we have never had firings for any like in the hunt teams this late into the season since 2012. And I think this was just like a data gathering thing. It's probably since quite a bit longer. And the last time any team with a better net rating, so it's like offensive points per possession minus defensive points per possession, the last time any team with a better net rating fired their head coach, it was in January, first of all. But second, it was the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. And we know that that's like a unique situation, right? LeBron just did not want Ty Lue. Like, that was what happened. It didn't seem like that's really the case for the Grizzlies or the Nuggets. I'm not really confident that Jokic cares that much about his workplace. So I don't. This is so bizarre. Like, to have a firing in late March or early April in the NBA evidently is nearly unprecedented, or at least unprecedented in modern NBA. And these late firings tend to be, February to March, and they tend to be teams that have a negative net rating. What?
Yeah. So here we are. We're about to enter the playoffs. Nobody really knows who they're playing, and most of the teams that'll be on the bottom half of this could put up a real fight, and it should be absolute chaos in the playoffs. It should be great. What
cool. Well, I do like chaos.
Yeah, don't. I wouldn't suggest betting on the first round this year. Maybe wait until the second round. Let's go to Kyle.
I mean, don't bet at all. Obviously,
well, yes, Kyle Slaby asks, if you had to drink a full gallon of a condiment for $1 million by itself, what condiment would you drink? My wife and I decided that sauces are not condiments, so marinara is not allowed.
So I think a lot of people. So I saw this question, thought about preparing for it, and then just chose not to. So
the Arif Hassan story,
right? So I think a lot of people intuitively might think ketchup, and I get it, but ketchup is like crazy acidic. I don't think you want to do that. Obviously, a lot of people don't want to do mayo because it's really fatty. Yep. I get that.
Too thick.
Yeah. And you will throw up. There's just like not a question about that. In fact, I don't know that there are many options here where you won't throw up. This is tough.
This is a gallon. This is
a gallon.
This is a ridiculous amount of stuff here.
Yeah, I was like thinking maybe the mildest mustard, which you might think is actually acidic, and it's not really that acidic. Like the mildest mustard imaginable, which would still suck. That's up there. I assume we're not including salsas here. If we are, I'd probably like a mango salsa.
If you were going salsa, that would make it easier.
Very, very low acidity mango salsa.
You could potentially do a salsa here. You could potentially do, but like one of the things is you have to account for thickness. And I know there's like some joke in there, but you have to account for thickness because I would want this to be a runnier situation. If I'm going to be dealing with a gallon.
Oh, wait, no, hold on. Wait, no, you can't use barbecue sauce. Dang, I was
actually thinking like a barbecue sauce. Yeah, if you went with like more of a vinegar-based sauce, but even then, that's going to build it up.
Yeah, I think barbecue sauce would be good, but the question specifically says sauces are not condiments, which I largely disagree with, right? Yeah. I think for the purposes of this question does make sense.
I think if you were going with like made sauces, where like a marinara, like I don't feel like barbecue sauce is on the same level as a marinara for that.
Right, it's not quite. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
I might be able to do a peri peri.
Right, I could maybe do a chimichurri.
That's a lot.
No, it is. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of garlic.
As it turns out. And I can't do pesto because I don't even like pesto to begin with. No, I think like a peri peri or a thinner barbecue sauce I could consider. Maybe I was gonna say the yum yum sauce, but no, that's probably too much too.
Mm-hmm. I could. No, I couldn't do a hollandaise. It's too much fat.
No, you're gonna die.
You're gonna die.
Well, one of the comments when this had been posted in the Discord was maple syrup seems like the option. Boy, you're gonna lose a foot. There's no good way this ends for you.
You know, the original ketchup was a mushroom ketchup. I wonder if that would be a good move here. How much? I don't think there's a ton of vinegar in mushroom ketchup. Might do that.
Probably be less acidic, but at that point, why? Kyle Slaby also asks, for Arif's essay Nook, I'm reviewing scholarship applications, and one of the students writes the following, quote, 200 words seems hardly enough to describe all the things I've had the pleasure to be involved in, end quote. Does this person have a future as a football blogger by using 10% of their allotted words to describe how they need more words? Is it better to reject this application to speed run their dropout turned ESPN contributor career?
Okay, that seems a little pointed, but
a little on the nose.
I would say, did they accomplish their goal? Because if they did accomplish their goal while sacrificing 20 words, that is impressive. If they did actually write all of the things that they were involved in 180 words or however many are left, bravo! Like give that guy credit. Like that. Like I think that's worth it. Because he's basically stunting on the prompt at this point. He's styling on you, and you should respect that. If not, then yeah, obviously reject the application. But I think at the moment, like, did it work?
It is quite the good opening. I'm willing to bet that's the only thing that wasn't written by ChatGPT. I have seen a lot of.
Dude.
I've seen a lot of applications into different parts of the university and different. I'm as somebody who runs a festival, I see a lot of cold call emails sent out, and this one email didn't even like remove the prompt when I got it. It was just copy and paste the whole thing, including the prompt. Like you didn't even try. Thanks. I wasn't gonna like look at your email anyway, but thanks for making it so that I know for certain I can block you instead. Good stuff. Forlorn Vikings Optimist asks, for Arif's child labor-based cookie empire corner, what are the top 3 Girl Scout cookies, and why do Thin Mints belong nowhere near the top of the list?
I mean, I like Thin Mints. So the distance between my top Girl Scout cookie and Thin Mints is large. I just don't know if Thin Mints are even outside of my top 3. They might sneak in, right? So there's not a lot. They discontinue a couple every time. I had to look it up right before the show. And it turns out like this recent group of Girl Scout cookies, I haven't even tried like half of them. So for me, the top ones are, and they have 2 names, peanut butter patties or tagalongs, right? Whichever one. I love those. I'm addicted to those. Those are the best. They're incredible. I highly recommend them. That's first by a mile. After that, I do like Adventurefuls a lot. So like kind of a brownie with a caramel drop in the middle. Those are really good. And then I haven't had the lemonades. James seems to like them. I haven't had the Toastier, which basically look like cookies that are cinnamon toast crunch. And if that delivers on its promise, that's easily a number 2, if not a number 1. Easily a number 2 if it delivers on its promise. The problem I have, though, is that the last time I was excited about a new Girl Scout cookie, a weird sentence, was the s'mores cookie. And that has to be one of the most disappointing cookies I've ever had. I love s'mores flavored things. It's like one of the things that animates me. I like get up in the morning for s'mores flavored things. It's like the top 2 flavors of desserts you can have: 1 s'mores, 2 cookies and cream / Oreo. Like those are outstanding ways to construct like an ice cream or whatever, right? And the s'mores cookie was so disappointing. I can't come up with another word that won't violate the plans that we've made for the iTunes rating. I am hurt and stunned and betrayed is really the best I can say. So I can't say that just from concept alone that Toastier or whatever they're called are in this top 3. But we're one to kind of replace Thin Mints as the 3rd. This would be a strong contender.
I just like that you are so passionate about this particular type of cookie, and how much it's clearly ruined your life.
Look, when you have dreams of perfection, right? When you can combine the high highs, the extraordinary quality that you get from the brand that is Girl Scout cookies, right, with your favorite dessert flavor, period. I just, it almost makes me want to exploit children for labor to produce desserts.
Almost. It almost makes you want to do this.
Right, but I wouldn't, of course.
No, that would
even as it grows gradually more legal state by state.
It is odd how you were in one direction and the country just slowly seems to be going in that direction now. I don't get it personally, but Arif's 8th grade crush asks, question for Arif's legal corner. How much money did you make via insider trading? I assume that's supposed to be trading using Trump's tariff knowledge.
Insider training. Why would I get it? Would insider? How would I be an insider here?
Look, ain't nobody making money right now.
Like anybody who had like an option call before the market opened, or actually, well, because the tariffs were announced like right after market closed. No, it must have been right before the market. I don't know. I don't remember. I clearly don't pay attention to this. Anyone had the correct option call made insane money, and that's about it, right? Like the I forget what they're called, but the options that essentially sell before you buy, kind of thing. Great, good job, those people that did that for a good chunk of stocks. I guess some healthcare stocks are doing fine, which is funny because if you had asked me 3 months ago which category of stock would be doing the worst right now, it'd be the one where the CEO ran into some trouble. But no, I guess they're doing all right. All of the other ones, not so much. So cool. I did not get inside knowledge that these tariffs would be imposed, and I resent the implication that I would.
Look, even Philip Morris is going down, and that's basically
that's crazy. That's wild.
That's my retirement account, actually. Let's go to also from Arif's 8th grade crush for Arif's Signal corner. Which Signal chat would you like to accidentally be added to? And is the one with all your co-hosts, Ed, James, Dusty, Luke, Sam, Caleb, Ben, where they lament working with you?
Okay, first of all, no chance are all of those people in the same group chat.
We should work on that. I feel like that's. I know Dusty and I.
You are basically describing an existing group chat for James, right?
Yeah.
Like all of your exes have a group chat.
It's not pleasant. I don't suggest it.
You, in accidentally describing one thing, have actually described another. And here's the problem: I've been accidentally added to several relatively sensitive and some not so sensitive Signal chats over the past 2 years. I hate it. None of it's newsworthy. It just sucks.
I like that you've described trying to leave one of them multiple times, and the guy just keeps adding you back.
They just keep adding. I don't.
That's absolutely something I would do. That's something I would absolutely like. No, if I can't leave this, you can't either.
I think that's what motivated it. It was just like someone accidentally added me. I was like, I don't care about this, and I left. And someone else was like, nah, this sucks for me. It's gonna suck for you. And guess what? They were right. It does suck for me.
Yep, you just got to take it down from the inside now. You just have to ruin the group chat. That's how it works.
That's a different group. We're talking about 2 different group chats right now.
Well, sure. Damian Barrett asks, question for James. Please rank all of your proposals.
Oh, here we go.
Why?
What?
Why on earth is one
Just
of them is
them.
absolutely not power rank them? I'm gonna power rank the 3 times I got engaged. Sure.
Yeah. That seems pretty appropriate for the show.
But if we're gonna do this, I'm gonna need some like qualifiers here. Because are we including the nightmare that happened afterwards, or are we just including
just the proposal?
Just the proposal itself, not the quality of the human being, not
Correct.
any of that, just how the thing. Okay. Well, at number 3, then.
So number 1's Taco John's, right?
Number 3 is going to be the second one that I had, where it was shortly after a health scare, and I legitimately was in the crash room and stuff. And then I was home for a couple of weeks or a month or so, and had proposed, I think, in my parents' living room. After talking to her parents, that was relatively normal, quiet-ish, fine. Number 2 would be the one to my quotation ex-wife, which if I remember correctly, was in downtown Fargo. Yeah, I think it was in downtown Fargo because I did something with it. That's right. Downtown Fargo. We were at it was like a really nice restaurant / hotel down there that I don't think the business is there anymore. But we were down there and she'd asked me to print out a bunch of pictures for her of like things that we'd like been doing recently and like family and kids and stuff. And I had put note cards in with the pictures that were like talking about like little things about our relationship or whatever. And then in that was like the proposal. And then I had the ring and everything. And we got engaged at the restaurant. I thought I was being clever. If that marriage would have worked, that would have been a solid engagement. That would have worked just fine. It did not. Number one has to be Taco John's, and it's not even close. The Taco John's situation is still. It hurts because it's so funny now, but she legitimately was so happy. This was exactly what she wanted. I was dating my college girlfriend. We'd been living together for a while, and I think she was 20, maybe 21. I think I was 23 at the time. Sure, that's a number that makes sense. I wouldn't suggest getting married at either of those ages. But yeah, she when we were in college, she worked at Taco John's. When she was in high school, she worked at Taco John's. It was her favorite food, despite all good reasons why that shouldn't be the case. And she wanted to get so we went out to Taco John's, and I've told the story a couple times on the show. We went out to Taco John's, and she was worried I was going to break up with her because I was being very quiet while she ate her Mexi rolls with extra sour cream. And we drove home, but we had to there wasn't like a Taco John's in the city. Because the one that was in the city proper, like in St. Paul over in Phelan Park, had just been robbed. So it was closed that day. So we had to go up to like Little Canada in order to like Little Canada and 694 or whatever. So we had to go up there. And so we go there and we eat, and I'm quiet and she's concerned. Which I get. If I'm not talking, there's probably something wrong. And we made it home to the Midway in St. Paul, and we went for a walk, which we never did. We walked over to this park across 94, and we were sitting and talking, and I got down on one knee, and I actually used the phrase, "Now I'm being 100% serious," because I have to announce that apparently while I'm talking. Meanwhile, apparently 10 feet from us, a drug deal is going on.
Hell, oh my God, hell yeah.
Now that's something I had forgotten about, and she had reminded me of it the last time we had spoken about something. So yeah, apparently there was a drug deal happening a few feet away from me doing
Outstanding.
this. So yeah, that one was impressive. That one was good for all the wrong reasons. So yeah, I think that one has to be power rank number 1. Not even close.
Yeah, how can you compete?
It's hard because it involves Taco John's of all things. All right. Let's go to Bridge Over Teddy Water, who asks, for the questionable decisions corner, I'm acquaintances with someone who lives a floor below me. Each time we see each other in the hall or neighborhood, we have a very pleasant but brief conversation. But at some point, she got in her head that I'm a teacher. I very much am not. But now each time I see her, she asks questions like, is it spring break for you guys yet? And how are the kids? And I've deflected it, but I've let it go on for too long to not make it weird. How do I get out of this hole I've dug for myself? You encourage people to lie all the time. How do you do it?
Okay, all right. There's actually a very similar. Okay, so this is a very stupid thing that I've done, which is read a bunch of Reddit. I don't recommend it, but there's a very similar situation happening in the r/advice subreddit. I wish I could remember it, but they described it as George Costanza-ing themselves, which is exactly what's happening here. To I guess a smaller
they believe they are marine biologists at this point.
But yeah, it's. Oh, okay. Actually, now I remember what it was. This is actually insane. So at one point, this person is, I think, talking to their girlfriend. I think it's like a person they're in a relationship with. And their girlfriend is offering them something with like peanuts in it or peanut butter in it that they don't want and they don't like. And they just don't want it to be offered to them again. So they say they're allergic to peanuts and they're not. And oh my gosh.
This always ends poorly.
Right. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. It's like, yeah, no, I know you didn't know. And so they've like gotten rid of all of the peanut items in the house. And then she told all her friends. And slowly that grew into his whole friend group. So for the past 5-6 years, all of his friends think he has a peanut allergy. And they're really good friends. They will call ahead at restaurants to see, like, you know, we're all going to go to a restaurant. Hey, my friend has a peanut allergy. It's pretty serious. Is there a way to make sure that peanuts don't touch our dishes? And if not, do you recommend like a different restaurant? That kind of thing. And like they'll like make food for each other. At one point, at like a potluck or something, someone brought like a peanut butter cake, and another one of the friends took that cake and threw it in the trash. Right, all in service of the original poster's peanut allergy that they don't have. And the thing is, this person just didn't like the one item. They love peanut butter and have been sneaking peanut butter Reese's like the whole time. And now they don't know what to do about it. And while, again, I don't recommend lying, and I wanted to be very clear, I'm against lying. The Reddit replies were clever. That's what I'm going to say. Is they were clever and they were like, hey, we happen to be in like hay fever pollen allergy season. So what you should do is you should be talking about like sneezing a lot and saying that you need to see an allergen doctor. I forget. We actually recalled the name of an allergen doctor because of the Aaron Rodgers episode way back. And now I've already forgotten the name. So go to an allergen doctor and get tested for allergens. And then on that test, it'll show you're not allergic to peanuts. And so you can tell all your friends, hey, I'm not allergic to peanuts anymore. That's crazy. I guess I grew out of it or something. And then thank your friends for their diligence in preventing exposure to peanuts, because maybe that played a role. Now, I'm not saying you should pretend you got fired from being a teacher, because if you keep talking to this person, A, they're going to be sad that you got fired when you didn't. B, they're going to ask what it was like to be a teacher, at which point you still have to maintain the lie. So that's not going to work. But I think here you're in a spot, you're pre-throwing up the cake. You're not at the point at which someone has to throw out a cake at a party. Yeah. I think you could just say, hey, I know it's an acquaintance, so it's hard to be like, hey, we need to talk. Be like, hey, for whatever reason, it seems that you think I'm a teacher, and I don't know why you thought that, but I'm not. But I really appreciate that you're asking about my life. Maybe don't say that last part, because again, they're just an acquaintance. But like, be like, hey, I think you just like grin and bear it. Like, just be like, hey, I'm not a teacher. I'm sorry for whatever reason you thought I was, but I'm not. This is my job.
I was really, really expecting you to say, look, May is coming up. Just tell them that your contract wasn't renewed.
Oh my God. No.
I was expecting you to say that. It sounds better in your voice. So if you can imagine Arif saying that, then that's his actual recommendation.
Do you want me to say it, James, so you can hear it in my voice?
I don't even think it's necessary at this point. I think we've
done. Then I won't, because I'm not going to let you clip me doing that. No.
No, I'm not trying to like neg you into saying it.
Neg me.
That's not what we're doing here. Okay, that's
being a producer is just like being a pickup artist if you think about it.
I am not responsible for any of this. This is not your desire to lie to people or tell people to lie. Is
James
not,
the Game Pagoshnik. Yeah, okay, I see.
Yeah, that's I get engaged after eating Taco John's. I clearly am the game master. Yes. Finally, from a second jet has hit Drew Bledsoe, and we are very much off the rails here. For Arif's DEIA corner, can the Eagles use known melanin lacquer and Super Bowl champion Cooper DeJean as the poster boy for why diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility are truly worth keeping to the current administration? Can this white boy save America?
First of all, we should not ever really focus on the phrase "Can this white boy save America?" We gotta not have that one in the holster.
That's too much. Yeah, that's don't like that.
Don't like that. And here's the thing: 100%, there's going to be people saying that about Barron Trump. That's the worst part. I think that maybe pointing out that the Eagles won because of a white football player, I think that is probably going to go backwards. I think that is going to backfire on you, and that the people who you are trying to convince about the value of diversity are going to get the wrong message from it. And this is just, again, this is not a political show. None of us know anything about politics, of course. But I would hazard a guess that the people who are working to eliminate, let's pick a random example, Jackie Robinson from the Department of Defense. I don't know why I thought of that one, but eliminating Jackie Robinson, who had served in the military, from websites hosted by the Department of Defense, or something like that. Who's to say, right? I don't know if that happened. Who's to say? I think that the people who are focused on doing stuff like that maybe are a little bit less concerned about the implementation of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility initiatives, and more concerned about the importance of, what's the right word to use here? Whitewashing history. Sorry, I couldn't think of another word. I guess I'm a little colorblind when it comes to these kinds of talking points, because again, we don't talk about it that much. It's not a political show, so I'm out of my depth on this one.
I would tend to concur that that sort of organization is not somebody who enjoys subtlety.
Right.
Subtlety is not something that they would necessarily get or understand. So that's just where I'm at.
Great.
And I did see that Roberto Clementi's number got brought back from the Pittsburgh Pirates wall. There are a few owners in sports that truly are heinous and that the public just despises. And
owners are bad, but there's a few of them that transcend the mere concept of bad.
I believe his first name's Bob. I believe it's Bob Nutting. And now Bob Nutting is the owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He is also a terrible human being. And the town hates him. The team has been awful for a very long time. He will not spend money. The park is gorgeous. But yeah, they'd taken down the big memorial on the wall of Roberto Clementi's number and everything that they had announced would be there in perpetuity, and they tore it down in order to put a juice sale thing up.
Yeah, they said it was a mistake, and I just don't see, because someone has to make the decision.
Yeah,
I don't I just
it looks
don't
bad.
See
even if Bob Nutting didn't necessarily go and say yes, we're absolutely doing someone had to think maybe this is a bad idea.
Yeah, if you're the one tasked with this particular responsibility, right? Be I have to put a sign up over this guy's honorarium, whatever, right? You would double check, right? You'd run that up the chain and be hey, so just want to be clear that you want me to do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He refuses to sell. He absolutely flat out refuses to sell. He's not cartoonish supervillain like the owner of the Oakland Athletics. which they're not in Oakland anymore, but you can't,
Right.
he's not that level of supervillain where he wants to put baseball where there shouldn't be. But still, it's really funny to see when Bob Nutting is in the news for doing something stupid. And this is right at the top of the list. Anyway, that's my end of rant for that. That is the end of this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Arif, what do you have to plug?
I actually have a bunch of plans for Wide Left that won't be announced until actually this time next month, but pretty excited about that. I've got my upcoming piece will be on pro days that stood out to me. If people remember what I wrote last year, it was about why I don't use RAS. I'm not going to relitigate that. I will be linking to that old piece, but I've got a couple of pieces about pro days. And then, of course, coming down the line will be the consensus big board. That's going to be kind of a big part of the coverage of the draft this year. And then after that, I get to share some really, really exciting news about Wide Left that hopefully people are similarly excited about. So working in the background, I've been talking to business professionals, which, by the way, I don't recommend that. That sucks. But I've got a lot of irons in the fire. So look forward to that. Otherwise, right now you can head over to Wide Left, check out a piece for why pro day reporting is so bad. That piece is up right now. And then soon there's going to be a piece about what we are learning from these pro days.
So look forward to Arif's OnlyFans launching soon.
That's not God. All right.
It's not going to be onlyfans.com/wide-left. That's not.
Okay. First of all, my understanding is that OnlyFans takes too large of a cut. So if I was going to do that, it wouldn't be OnlyFans. But second, no, there's nothing of the sort.
So, full disclosure, just in case something ever happens with Patreon, we have discussed what we would do.
That's true. We do have, yep.
We have discussed what we would end up doing. OnlyFans did come up as a potential option, but they
are marketing themselves as more than the thing that they are known for.
This is accurate.
Cooking shows and comedy specials and workout videos, and by that I mean actually workout videos, not like a euphemism.
There's and it would be a convenient place for Arif to sell his feet pics. So
come on.
We did come up with a short list of things just in case something ever happened with Patreon, but no, I have no current plans to move to that particular platform, but all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci. But that is it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. For Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember that the horrors continue to persist. And so do we. And we'll be back soon. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.